AI is something that humans can use to make things better, faster, and more in line with their vision than they ever could before.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Brainiac Blueprint, where we discuss the intersection of AI and how it impacts business and the world around us with our esteemed guests. I am your host, Kyle Lambert, founder of Left Brain AI and Action Hero Marketing. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss how AI can help you to become an author and boost your business. With that being said, welcome to the show, Julie Trelstad.
Hi, thank you for having me, Kyle.
Yes, it's great. I know we've been kind of waiting for this to happen for a couple months. I had some scheduling issues, so I'm glad we're able to do this. I'm excited to jump into AI and authorship. So, Julie, as our Brainiac today, you are the head of publishing at Amlet AI. I know you're also the founder of Paperbacks and Pixels. So, can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about you, about those endeavors, and everything you're working on?
Absolutely. So yeah, Amlet AI is a brand new company. It's actually founded in Milan. I am the US representative of this company that has developed a licensing infrastructure for published work on the internet. So in other words, instead of having a copyright page or a barcode, it's actually a thumbprint of a book created by a digital signature maker using the ISCC, a standard code that allows book authors to license their work out to AI companies
Interesting.
or prevent it from being licensed, save it,
Sure.
not be scraped, whichever you prefer.
Give you the control. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Is this something that authors have been thinking about? I assume they've been thinking about it forever, and now it's kind of a new wave with AI and kind of having to approach it a little bit differently.
Exactly. So I could just introduce my other company, Paperbacks and
Sure.
Pixels, which is a consultancy for authors. So I've
Okay.
worked in the publishing industry for a couple of decades, and I help authors get oriented in this sort of new environment, help them publish books. But yes, absolutely, AI has been top of mind for authors. It's very divisive. People either love it or they hate it or are curious about it.
Hmm.
And last year it made big news when we discovered, or 2 years ago when we discovered, that OpenAI and Anthropic built their models largely out of databases of stolen or pirated books. Thousands, tens of thousands of books were ingested into these systems without anybody's permission to create the technology that formed the chatbots we use every day.
Interesting. Interesting. So, do you know? I don't want to go too deep into that to give them too much of a spotlight, but
No.
what was that process like? Was there digital copies of books online, and they basically
Yeah.
said like refer to these as your training type of thing, or what was that
What
like?
I understand actually happened is that there was no way for these companies to get hold of books easily. And so so they fed it actual pirated libraries, which you can
Mm,
find, like almost every book that gets published gets pirated.
sure.
But there's usually controls around that, and you kind of have to be a hacker to get to them. So,
Okay.
it doesn't affect most people's access or buying books, and it doesn't, unless you're Stephen King or a very big name author, it doesn't really affect your sales. But there was probably no one in publishing had like an AI company said, "Hey, I would like to use all your books and train this big thing." People would not have even known how to license that or what to
Sure.
charge for it or what it even meant. Most clearly, the way publishing works is an author will sign a contract with the publishing company. So there's that contractual obligation between the creator and the company. So there was nothing in the existing contractual mechanisms that gave publishing companies the right to even do that.
Okay.
So, and what I understand about, a developer was telling me that OpenAI was existing a number of years before they ever released it to the public. And it wasn't until they started feeding it fiction that it actually got good at talking to people. Like before that, it
Interesting.
was trained on technical manuals and like anything they could find in an email. But once they started feeding it novels, it got a lot more conversational.
That's so interesting, especially because like there's probably nonfiction books out there that are like this is how you should be a better conversationalist, right?
Right?
So that's kind of funny to think about, but interesting. This brings me back to my early teen days of being on Napster or something like that and pirating music.
For sure, same
So
thing.
yeah, so it's interesting how we've switched, and I'm sure piracy of books has been going on forever, but
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, we've gone from mainstream music piracy to now to book piracy
Yeah,
or
I don't know
literature
what
piracy.
I don't think I know any college students who don't acquire most of their reading material in that way, but it's not something, it's something we want to protect against, but it is not, you know, it's not affected people like this. But a lot of authors got really justifiably very angry that there was
Sure.
no compensation for this. And now that we know it happened, Amlet is coming in and we're calling it the time now, the post-scraping age. So like
Hmm.
we're not, these companies are paying billions of dollars in settlements to resolve this issue that they took material that wasn't paid for. They would much rather pay to license it. And AI companies absolutely need human created content in order to properly train their models. So it's an
Sure.
important resource and they want to pay for it. And Amlet makes that possible and easy.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, there's plenty for us to dive into there, and we're certainly going to. But as you know, I like to have all of my guests finish the prompt I think AI is, and I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like you're a lover of AI, but you also know the danger. So I'm curious to see how you're gonna finish this answer here.
Yeah, I would get, yeah, definitely kind of in the middle. I think AI is an amazing tool for human creativity. And I think that AI is something that humans can use to make things better, faster, and more in line with their vision than they ever could before.
Interesting. Interesting. I like that you are thinking of it as a positive for human creativity. Because I think it can be, there's a lot of people who think of the AI slop and, just like all this kind of random stuff being created that, isn't fine tuned or doesn't have the detail and all that kind of stuff. And it can be hurting creativity, but
True.
you see it the other way, where you're able to be, a little bit more creative and almost more empowered to be passionate and creative.
Yeah, I think you can be. I mean, I'm not denying that AI slop exists, but I think a lot of that is somebody just ran a prompt and walked away and put that thing up there without paying any attention.
Yep.
Like the worst offenders in the book industry are where a best-selling book comes out and 3 days later there's an AI copy. I bet you the person who generated that with AI didn't even read that book.
Most likely.
Whereas people who are using AI very ethically and with a lot of consideration are sweating over every M dash that they
Hmm.
keep telling the AI not to include.
Yep, yep. It's gotten the M dash has gotten a bad reputation these days. Well, awesome. So, like we discussed, you're the head of U.S. publishing at Amlet, and you founded Paperbacks and Pixels. Can you just dive in a little bit more about your role, provide a little bit more detail about what you're trying to accomplish, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. At Amlet, I'm mostly working with partnerships, and I'm actually having a lot of conversations like this one to help people kind of find out about it and know that it exists. It's definitely a very pioneering technology.
Hmm.
With paperbacks and pixels, I work with authors. I do two things. I coach. I have something called the Author Studio, and where I run boot camp type things to help authors build their platform, understand marketing, build marketing practices, help them raise their visibility. And of course, I use AI tools in helping all of those things, as well as helping authors find new pathways to profitability with their books, if
Okay.
that's their desire.
Very cool. It's always good to be profitable or be more profitable, right?
Yeah, it's a hobby for some people and
Okay, fair
others,
enough. Yeah.
some people just, it's a creative outlet. So, and I give people the blessing that too. If you write a book, it doesn't mean you have to like sell it or make $1 million. Just getting it out there and presenting your work to the public for a lot of people is the end goal. But other people really want to build a career around it, which isn't easy, but I can help them do it.
Fair enough. Yeah. How about you? I know we obviously dove into your background a little bit more, but remind me, have you do you have anything published or authored or anything like that?
I have a few novels in the drawer, but I have to say AI is helping me write a lot faster.
Okay,
And we talked about that too. I'm working on a series of sci-fi novellas right now, and
that's right.
I'm using actually Claude. Well, I don't let Claude write for me, but after every writing session, I record what I'm thinking, my notes, remember the characters. I let Claude pass through and say, I am looking, is it doing this thing for me? Am I getting enough depth in my characters? And let that critique happen, and then I rewrite. And the most interesting thing, and Claude is keeping a running record of this. So when I get to the end and I'm ready to publish the work, I have a full record of how I collaborated exactly with AI.
Interesting. That I've always been so intrigued with character development, whether it's a TV show or novels or whatever it may be, of how do you keep things straight? Like, how do you remember that this character has, this degree or, this allergy, or whatever it is. And it seems like now this could be almost a way to be an inventory of characteristics, for your characters to make sure that you're staying consistent. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. It used to be just like a notebook I used to keep or a stack of note cards or like things pasted everywhere. And then I would change some detail and then forget to change it all the way through. So
Hmm.
AI is really excellent for that. So I can keep a character dossier and sort of with Claude's new capabilities or even I keep like a running Airtable database of all those details and it just updates it every time I ask it to.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I've never, again, like I've just never really thought about the actual ins and outs of creating this kind of stuff. So
It's like
it's
so much to keep track of.
well,
That's why AI
exactly.
is really great.
It's so much more than just writing. There's so much organization and planning, and yeah, that's very cool. So that would be in this instance a positive disruption. So I'm curious in all of your years of work in the publishing space, how does this compare to previous disruptions in the publishing space?
Yeah, I've talked about that before. Like I've always been like a tech pioneer and I
Hmm.
feel like I walked in the door in my first publishing job like the week after they unboxed their first desktop PC.
Hmm. Yep.
And it
Yep.
was connected with a phone modem that you had like squealed every time we sent copy over. But within 6 months, we got Quark Express. We were doing desktop publishing. I was around when Amazon got started and we started doing ebooks. And then I was around for when social media just completely changed the way authors operate in the world. They all of a sudden had to be social media people. Whereas before, they were sole publishers, held all the marketing roles. And then, ebooks have led now to AI. So this is just sort of the latest in the long line of disruption. I feel
Hmm.
like this moment is a lot like the 90s when ebooks and digital books came on, because I think I was describing earlier this contract problem that authors have, that authors have a publishing contract with a publisher. And in the 90s until 1991, there was no mention of digital books at all. So when ebooks came around in the late 90s, early 2000s, all of a sudden there was a gold rush for players like Amazon's KDP and some third parties like Open Road Media that
Hmm.
came in and scooped up all the ebook rights to books that publishers and authors thought they held the publishing rights to, but didn't. Obviously, the authors got paid, but say sometimes it undercut agents, sometimes it undercut publishing houses, where they may have been publishing the paperback, but all of a sudden you could get the ebook from someone else.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So I feel like this has really changed, and I don't know if this is the right way to word it, but almost the value of an individual piece of content. It has become a little bit more commoditized, but so the quality has to be, even better.
Better, yeah.
Yeah, it's because there's so much out there, so that's how you stand out. And um, it's interesting just to think about how really putting in the work, the detail, the organization, develop the characters like we talked about, and that's how you really start to stand out now. Because anybody can be putting together these ebooks or putting together these novels and everything nowadays. So,
It's it's easy.
yeah,
But
yeah,
not
yeah.
but not simple.
Very true. Very true. So like how do you think about, so you said you're writing these pages or these books, or you're helping other people to think about, their literature. How do you, like, is there a framework that says that this chapter, this book, whatever it is, like this has reached a certain level of quality or a certain level of value? And
Mm.
I'm thinking about how you kind of approach that and think about that.
Well, I don't think there's like one standard of value. Like
Sure.
there's all these different things. Like in publishing, we have like professional and technical books that are peer reviewed and like have this like level of thing. On the other hand, we have like, somebody writes a memoir. What you just want is you want, the ideas to flow naturally. You don't want the reader to be going, what the heck is she talking about?
Hmm.
Um, and it can be very conversational, it can be very simple, but it doesn't, as long as it's not confusing. And then we always have the standard of we don't want more than one typo per 1,000 words if we can avoid
Okay.
it.
That's good. There you go. Got to eliminate the typos.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay, so obviously a lot is changing with AI. It's going to continue to change. I know this is a very difficult question to kind of think about in the future, but I'm curious how you think, the role of an author or a publisher in the next few years might shift even more with AI, or where you think it might plug in. We were discussing earlier, you're automating your business and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, just where you see more shifts happening with in this space.
I think elimination of typos, even more typos,
Okay.
getting even more accurate is going to be
Hmm.
important. I do think there's a lot of room for automation in the industry because we have very set processes. The manuscript actually, it's like in traditional publishing takes almost 3 years to come out. And I was having this conversation actually with another publishing person this morning about, I don't think we're going to eliminate talented editors, but we're going
Hmm.
to AI enable them so that they have tools to help them do their jobs faster and more with more accuracy and more creativity. That you don't want them not to be reading it, but you don't want them to, the mind plays tricks on you. You miss things.
Hmm.
But it can help them run routines with manuscripts and do more of them with higher quality and faster. Um, Already in the publishing industry, just since the 90s, since the digital revolution, we have seen the number of books created and produced explode. Like,
Sure.
so in the 90s, there were like 400 books every month or so published from all the publishers, and now there's 4,000 a week, you know?
Mm,
So like there's been a tremendous amount of productivity gain. The problem is we don't have enough readers. But
fair
what's
enough.
but what's really interesting, and we've learned this through Amlet, is that what we foresee happening is that already, and it's already happening, is that AI agents are out there finding books on your behalf. So it probably there's a number of people already that are like sending out these AI bots every night, find me all the interesting things and bring me a compilation. That a single bot can read 1,000 books in the time one person can read one, or
Hmm.
faster even, so that we're going to see more things called out and brought back, and that AI is going to be the primary discovery mechanism. It may well be that you just get pieces of books instead of being delivered a whole work. And even Amlet actually can break a book down into 3 sentence chunks, to the
Okay.
individual bits of the book that can be actually taken into a new context and recomposed in combination with other people's books and other works of literature. So the machine readability of books, I think, is going to be the biggest change that we're going to see and already are seeing in the industry, and along with the increased productivity.
That's so interesting. As a trained marketer, I've been in marketing my entire career. A lot of what we do in terms of our campaigns or our content or whatever it is, you focus on your audience, right? For me, it's B2B lead generation, right? And so to get in front of the right people, we're putting together messaging that resonates with them. But you need to do it in a way so that Google and ChatGPT and the platforms understand it too. So it seems like like you said, like these authors, not only do they have to learn how to be social media managers and everything, now they have to learn how to speak the language of AI so that it can find that these agents can be like, oh yes, this is in this genre, so let me recommend it to this person who sent me out. And it's there's so much more to it that you just don't think about.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have, but AI can help.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
like you need these things, and it's just like I think what authors need to focus on most is developing personal brand and their own particular point of
Hmm.
view and like becoming known for that
Sure.
point of view and brand.
Well, so let's jump into that a little bit more and kind of tie in a couple themes here. So, you want to build your own brand. You have to be a marketer and everything like that. You have to know how AI works and all these different things while also just creating your book. And I think even though more output and productivity is a good thing, obviously burnout is an issue, and having to stay passionate and stay creative and everything. So I know that's something that you kind of think about with paperbacks and pixels,
Mhm.
helping them from burnout to to execution. So I'm curious what your consultancy kind of dives into, and what tools you're recommending, or what processes people may not be thinking about, or any of that kind of stuff, to
Yeah.
help people be like the best version of their author self.
I have to say, the most surprising thing that I've learned after doing this for a year is that the thing that people like the most is the community of the other authors.
I believe
Just
that.
like, yeah, it's just like number one. Like whatever I
Hmm.
build for them, they're like, it's really great. You show up because other people are showing up.
Sure.
And that's exciting. But I sort of look at four areas generally in terms of like what tools are needed and done. The first one, as I said, is just what I was just saying, it's positioning. It's finding your particular voice in your brand.
Okay.
And this comes back from my early days working in book publishing. I used to be an acquiring editor. So it was my job to bring books into the publishing house, and in order to get my bosses, the publishers, and the salespeople to buy something, I always had to prove two things. Number one, I had to prove this book was similar to last year's bestseller or similar to a book that was like it. And then I also had to prove that this book was unique in all the world. Kind of like you were saying about like, right for the audience and also right for ChatGPT.
Yep. Yep.
It's like the
Hmm.
same problem, right? You had to like prove those two things.
Yep.
And so I do a lot of work with authors and helping them find their very specific, unique positioning.
Okay.
And that's what, that's sort of the first step in figuring out who you are and how you are going to appear in public because, an author brand is kind of a manufactured thing. It's just one piece of who you are. It's
Sure.
how you're going to show up in these channels. And then, so once you have that figured out, the second one is platform, right? And so that's building those tools. And here you can talk about very specific tools like, there's a new kind of author website called a company called Tertulia that allows you now just enter the ISBN of your book and it builds a fully fleshed out website for you,
Oh
beautiful,
wow.
with all the functions that an author needs. I mean, that's one tool I would totally recommend. Um, and then the other tool that a lot of authors are building out on now is Substack.
Okay.
I'm seeing more authors. Social media has not gone away. I'm seeing more of them migrating towards the newer platforms like Threads or Blue Sky, focusing on Instagram probably more than they have, and even some are going way deep into Pinterest, like old
Okay.
school, and YouTube. So those are kind of the channels that authors, and I always just say pick one, and then you can appear on other ones. But if you go deep into one, you need a website, you need that, and then you need an email newsletter, and there's so many
Hmm.
platforms for that. Sort of the tool du jour for a lot of authors is Substack, which is good, and but you got to make sure that you own those names. So keep your names downloaded.
Yep.
Um, so those are the tools in building platform. Then we work on practice, which is part of the community aspect of it. And that is if you have to keep going. You have
Hmm.
to keep, you can automate, you can get an assistant, you can like create these practices for yourself where every month or every week you're sitting down and you're putting something out into public so that you maintain your visibility. And you want to
Okay.
do that with strategy. That's marketing, right? That's what you do.
Yep.
And finally, it's this profitability piece, which I think is really interesting. It's hard. I think that the industry and the way books are sold for so little money, and so many players are in the pie. If you print a paperback and you sell it on Amazon and even price it normal, like $12, you still only make 75 cents a book or something like that. You make
Mm,
very little. So I help authors develop things like selling direct to consumer, where they're bringing in more profit per book, or doing things like creating workshops or becoming publishers themselves. There are a lot of strategies we look at as like plain old book selling on Amazon. Unless you have a big deep series of books, it's really hard to make money on that. So if you want to be profitable, there are other creative things you can do.
very interesting. Very interesting. That's a lot to figure out. And sounds like AI, will definitely help you get there. What would you say is kind of a common mistake that you see authors make when kind of like figuring out those kind of four steps that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think too often they try to like be like someone else. I mean, we're telling them to
Yeah,
be like someone else, right? And I think there's um maybe it takes courage to like show up and be weird. But
sure.
I think authors have that in them, but I think really strong differentiation in voice and graphics in is really important. And I don't see enough of that. And authors tend to sort of think in like the tropes that we have, like, you're this kind of author or that. Um, so that's a problem. I think, just in terms of day-to-day things, it's keeping up with the practice that's hard for a lot of them. It's just like continually putting stuff out into the public is one of the more challenging tasks. It's easy to do fits and starts,
Hmm.
which is okay, but it accumulates over time. So being visible is maybe the hardest piece, and that's maybe where having some support makes that easier to do.
I love that. That as an entrepreneur, a lot of people, one of the things that I didn't fully grasp is just the loneliness of
Mm,
starting your own business, even though authors are creating a book, it's a business, right? And you're like locking yourself away or whatever, and putting pen to paper, it takes time, it takes quiet, it takes focus, and yeah, it's I can certainly see the value of having a community of being around people who are also creating and grinding and figuring it out. I can see that being a big source of inspiration, which is great because Hollywood would tell you it's grab a drink and walk around the zoo or something like that, right?
right.
So it's interesting to see that happens. That's very cool. Have you had a moment like that personally? Kind of being around a group of people and be like, oh wow, I'm so inspired and I just had a great idea or anything like that.
Well, I think I was beginning to tell you just before we got on, it's like I've fallen in with some vibe coders.
There we go. Yep, yep. That's
It was just
awesome.
kind of like an accidental discovery, like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is so much fun. Yeah.
It is fun. It is fun. You just like throw some music on in the background and start jamming, right? And hit it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
made a product over the weekend. You can find it on my website. They're little author tools. They will
Very cool.
write your copy for you in 5 minutes or less.
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm gonna have to check it out. Cool. So let's jump in a little bit more here to rights and compensation and licensing. And I
Mhm.
think you called it the post scraping world, right? So
Yes.
again, I just someone who isn't necessarily in that space, I found it to be interesting. Obviously, we all know licensing is a thing and piracy is a thing, but yeah, I like I talked about. I never thought about AI. Um, kind of like contributing to that issue. So I'm wondering if you can kind of break it down in a little bit more detail. Like what is kind of the machine readable meta? How is that created? How is it used or not used, and things like that? What should everybody like really be thinking at the beginning of this process when it comes to that?
Right. Real quick, I want to make a distinction between like blog posts and things that are public on the web and books,
Sure.
because generally, unless they're pirated, you can't access the content of a book on the web. You have to purchase it and you download it and you consume it.
Yep.
So that's different than like all the blog posts and podcasts and everything else that's like freely available.
Yep. Fair point.
So, a good amount of book publishing industry for forever, right, is selling things like television rights and foreign rights and large print rights and braille rights, like the rights to publish a different edition of a book has just like inherently been part of our industry. the London Book Fair just wrapped up, and people were telling me, oh, it's just like it's always been, people sitting down at tables, selling rights, foreign language rights, one country to
Hmm.
another. So when we think about AI rights for books, it's actually being able to sell the contents of the book rather than being translated into Spanish, being able to be used by an AI model.
Hmm.
And we break it down into kind of four different areas of those licensing things. So first of all, as I was mentioning before, the digital fingerprint is actually created from the book itself. So our
Okay.
technology allows you to either upload your book onto the Amlet server and they'll create that fingerprint for you, or if you're a large publisher, we can give you a piece of software and you can create, entirely on your own servers, fingerprints for all of your work. And I think of it like the Dewey Decibel System. It's like a code number that tells you exactly where that book fits on the library shelf. It's not the content of the book itself, but it's enough information about what's inside that book so it's distinguishable from every other book,
Okay.
basically. And so once you create that, then this identifier is created, and Amlet has created an open API for all you techies, where if you are developing software, you can plug into the Amlet catalog and quickly determine if a book is available for licensing. And you'll get four different conditions that people have assigned. And for the most part, everyone is beginning with the first condition, which is do not scrape. Just
Hmm.
don't. Or contact us personally if you want to license this material.
Hmm.
The second use would be, say, you're building the next Claude and you're creating this large language model and you need to purchase material to train the AI. As I understand it, that is a one-time thing. Basically, the AI ingests it. I don't know, it takes it apart, breaks it into all its little bits and pieces, and just mixes it in a soup with all the other materials. And so we imagine that for that, and I don't think there's a standard yet, but it'd be some multiplier of the cost, like 100 times the list price of that book, $150 if your book is 15, something like that. Or more if it's valuable, less if it's like not that valuable. I'm sure there's a commodity there.
Sure.
So that's the first use, and probably what people are complaining about and thinking about now. So that's one. The second one would be using it in research. So, like if you go out and do a deep research search using an AI tool, it goes out and grabs resources from the web. So this would actually allow your book, previously locked away from the public web, could actually be entered on a pay basis, like having a toll gate and saying, yeah, you can take content from this book if you pay me for every search and
Mm.
deliver the contents.
Almost like streaming. Like,
Yeah, it is
yeah.
kind of like it is like streaming, and there's some thinking around this that there might be two different ways of doing this. One is that a little bit of information can be exposed as long as there's a link back to the original source so that it gives them publicity and visibility.
Mm.
And the other way is like it's a per token use. So like you get paid by streaming like pennies every time this is exposed in a search.
Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the last one is like being able to use your book in an AI application, like a chatbot. And I use the example, this is already happening. So people are creating specialized chatbots, say for medical use, for instance. In that case, it's probably a credibility builder for that chatbot to be using medical textbooks as opposed to like scraped comments from WebMD or what you don't know came from where. So it gives it a high level of credibility. So either there would be like a single payment to be included in that particular model, but also it's probably a payment plus also this sort of streaming fee for every time your content is used in the context of a chat or delivering an answer from an AI. Then you get paid for that as an author.
Interesting. Okay. Seems like there's things moving in the right direction here. I'm sure adoption, at least from these platforms, is slow at this point, but
Oh,
hopefully we're
nobody knows
moving in
what
the right
to do
direction.
yet. Like nobody
Yeah.
even is thinking about this yet. I don't think. There's
Yeah.
certainly, vibe coders are like, oh, what can I make with this?
Yeah.
Um, So I think there's a room for a lot of creativity to build things around collections of books or collections of knowledge that an entrepreneur can say, like, oh, I want to take this collection of 30 children's books and create like a reading app or something like that.
Mm.
So that is like how things might want to be licensed.
I'm curious. Let's flip the script from the consumer standpoint. Is there a best practice to make sure that we aren't, using pirated content, or that we can identify it, or are there some platforms that are better than others, or anything like that? I mean, you don't have to put anybody on blast, but
No, 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 not at all. Just purchase your books, please.
fair enough. Fair
Just
enough. Yeah,
buy
yeah.
them. And yeah, and even like one problem with the in the European Union, there's an actual law that says you have to pay the creator when you purchase a book. In the United States, it's different. In the United States, it's just you have to purchase the book. But that could mean that you purchased a used copy from the Strand and you scanned it, and still that author doesn't get compensated, which is a
Mm,
little bit. So, yeah, used copies, if you're buying used books, authors are not compensated. However, if you're using the library, they are. So, think about that. I mean, nothing wrong with used books and selling used books, but if you purchase a book, from an indie bookstore like bookshop.org or your local bookstore, the publisher is going to be more highly compensated than if you bought it from Amazon. A lot of self-published authors, I would say, like, go wherever they send you. Like, if they send you to their link on Amazon and that's where they want to make their money, go there. Um, there's nothing wrong with purchasing a book on Amazon. It's just like, yeah, don't pirate your books.
yeah, 100%. I like that. Um, all right, let's do one kind of just a high level question here, and then we're going to jump into the rapid fire section. For anybody that is looking to jump into the world of authorship, start to write their own book. I'm curious if you have, maybe it's a tool, maybe it's like someone to read who writes about becoming an author, maybe it's some of your own content. I'm curious if there's a
Sure.
starting spot you would recommend for anybody.
Oh, wow, like your local writing group. I would say just start writing and like write with people if you can. And then there are a ton of great resources out there. There's Jane Friedman's blog, and others. I mean, you can Google them, but you certainly come to Paperbacks and Pixels. But primarily,
Hmm.
I work with authors who are already authors. I kind of help
Okay.
them go to the next level. I certainly have plenty of conversations with people who are just starting. If you want to write with AI, there's some really fun tools. There's a piece of software called Novel Crafter if you're writing a novel. And there are a few YouTube channels around like going deep. And they are communities around writing with AI and how to use it very specifically. And one thing you can do too is always ask your AI, if you know of like a particular model or a structure, you can, have a conversation with a chatbot with Claude and say, like, one structure I really like is Save the Cat, which is a famous screenwriting plotting method where you go through a certain number of particular kinds of scenes to go from beginning to the end.
Okay.
You can usually surface that by having a conversation saying, I'm having this story, and can you plot it out for me in Save the Cat style, which might actually work for like a marketing campaign as well. I've heard it used for that as well.
I'm
Um,
intrigued. I've worked with people in the past. Actually, a cousin of mine, he focuses on education a lot, and he's big on the hero's journey from Joseph
mhm.
Campbell. So it's
Yeah,
it's probably
it's
relatively
a
similar.
variation on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
whole idea of Save the Cat is like in the first scene, your hero has to do something nice so that you like them and you're
Okay,
invested with them. So like,
okay.
oh, save a cat. Even if
Got it.
he's
Got to.
cranky, he's a good guy.
Yep. Yep. Got to pull on those emotional strings at first to, yeah, make sure that everybody knows that they're the protagonist.
Right. And then one fun thing always is to participate in National Novel Writing Month, which is the month of October,
Okay.
or the month of July, they do Nano Camp, where people like in great joy try to write a lot of words really fast. And there's a lot of writing. If you're a beginner, you've never tried it before, it's like sign up to run a marathon and just go.
Interesting. Okay. So little group, y'all get together and
It's a
just kind of do your thing.
national, it's like an international thing, and you can
That's
sign
cool.
up and you can like score your words and you can form a local chapter. It's just for the joy of writing. It's so much
Sure.
fun.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Time to jump into the rapid fire section. I have 5 quick questions for you. You ready?
Sure.
All right. So I know you've been doing some of your own vibe coding, so I feel like I have an idea here, but I'm curious if you could just snap your fingers and have one automation just fully built out, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Actually, it would be keeping track of the podcast that I'm on, and I'm working on building such an application in there that
There
would
you
keep the
go.
transcripts and so that I can like, promote everyone.
Nice. All right. Awesome. That'll be perfect. All right. Number 2, what is one book you would recommend to everybody?
If you're really thinking about what the internet is doing to our brain, there's kind of this older book called The Shallows. I think the last name is Carr. And he talks about like how we're maybe losing concentration and the world is a different place. It gives you a good way to think about what we've done to ourselves and what we might do differently as as both consumers and creators.
Hmm. Interesting. You said it was The
The
Shallows, right?
Shallows. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little bit of
Okay.
an older book, but it's sort of like was written at that moment the internet was taking over everything.
Okay. Cool. I'll have to check it out. Do you have a favorite author, favorite book, favorite genre, anything like that for
Uh,
yourself?
I'm kind of a sci-fi junkie, and I
Okay.
adore the books of Becky Chambers. She hasn't written very many of them, but I really like her combination of humans and like these interspecies. We'll all figure out how to get along kind of books. But I will read pretty much anything you put in front of me. I may not
Okay.
finish it, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks using the Libby app from my
Okay.
library these days.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay. Question number 4. What do you find is your biggest source of inspiration?
Other people.
Okay.
Yeah, I just I don't really know what things come and then actually a tool I just built in Claude was like one chat where every time like something inspires me or I get a story idea, I tell Claude and it files it on a spreadsheet for me.
Okay.
So I learned years ago that having a story bank available when you're confronted with a blank page is really nice. And I find like you don't actually have to open a spreadsheet and enter it, just go into that one chat and have a little chat, even talk to it, and it files it away for you.
Interesting. It could probably even, I feel like you could probably pull something into a current thing that you're writing, right? And like have it be like a like side spin off or something like that. So that's cool. I like
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. And then question number 5, I'm curious if you just have any fun upcoming travel or upcoming plans, anything like that that you're excited about.
Oh, soon. I'm just looking forward to being spring.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm gonna get out. I have an electric bike. It's pink. It has a wooden
Nice.
basket on it. When the weather's nice, I like to ride that around.
Awesome. Yeah. We're getting close to spring weather and I'm very excited about it. All right, open forum. Is there anything that you're passionate about or that you're super excited about that maybe we didn't discuss that you want to dive into for a couple minutes here?
Um, the future of cities. That
Of
would be opening up
cities?
of cities. I actually studied architecture to begin with, and
Okay.
actually the focus of my novel is people complain about a lot about AIs, but why don't we just complain about cars and highways and like how our cities are need to be rebuilt for human beings? And I think that it's
Hmm.
not just people, if you want to complain about technology, think about like all the technology that we've built over the last 150, 200 years and where it's taken us away from our communities and our humanity and our bodies even. And I think a lot about how we can make cities more walkable, communities more close and lived. And it's a subject that I want to be exploring more. And I'm interested in writers who are talking about that as well.
That's interesting. You're up in New York, right? Was it?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm in Westchester County, just north of New York City.
Okay. Right. So I would say New York City. I'm in Philly, a smaller city, but
Very
similar in a lot of
walkable,
ways. Yeah,
right?
very very walkable. A lot of public transportation, but not necessarily designed for today's world. With all the cars and everything like that. But there is something about the closeness of being surrounded by all these people, and you feel connected. I always say, just taking the subway every day to the gym makes me feel connected to the community and to the people and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
everything you're saying is resonating.
The more we're plugging ourselves into monitors and talking on Zoom, I think the more we also have to get outdoors and
Yes,
walk.
100%. That is a beautiful sentiment. Well, Julie, I appreciate it. Anything else that you wanted to share or
No,
comment on? Or
it's been fun. I don't want to open up
yeah,
yet another can of worms. So
yeah, we'll go down another rabbit hole some other time. But thank you so much, Julie. Everybody can find you, Julie Trelstad, on LinkedIn. Amlet is amlet.ai, AMLET.ai. And then paperbacks and pixels.com. They could find you. Anything else you want to plug or any other ways that people can find you?
those are the best ways.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Julie, again, thank you so much for your time, for being a Brainiac on the Brainiac Blueprint. If you don't mind, please look at the camera and say, "Stay brilliant, Brainiacs."
Stay brilliant, Brainiacs.
Thank you so much, Julie.